I urge all able-bodied persons, particularly youth, to redirect their energies into agriculture.
President Adama Barrow presides over the launching of the multi-million-dollar food aid for vulnerable families.
The risk of losing control of that virus and letting the reproduction rate go back over 1. Because that would mean not only a new wave of...
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has warned against early complacency in the fight against COVID-19. Businesses in Egypt are on the verge of returning to normal operations as government amends coronavirus restrictions. This and more coming on The World Today. Hello, this is Africa TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin. I am Amadou Kante and now the news in detail. Thank you for joining us. The government of the Gambia has answered to the public's demand for provision of relief for communities that have been locked in homes without sufficient income to survive. More than $700 million worth of food is expected to reach up to 84% of vulnerable families due to the coronavirus global pandemic. The food basket is coming into the middle of a state of emergency meant to suppress the spread of COVID-19. Let's have more details of that in this report.
After about 1 month in state of public emergency, the government of the Gambia has allocated over $734 million as COVID-19 food aid to support 84% of affected communities. Speaking during the launching of the relief package on Sunday, the president noted that distribution of food items in rice, oil, and sugar will reach out to each of the vulnerable households across the country.
Will ensure that support provided to all citizens, especially the vulnerable, is real in value. In this respect, following a thorough review exercise, over $734 million is now available to support 84 deserving households countrywide. Such support will include rice, oil, sugar to each of the vulnerable households identified.
The launch of this support came in response to public demand for government to counter the ramification generated by the COVID-19 partial lockdown on markets and non-essential service centers.
Fellow Gambians, conscious of the difficulties that confront many households, the government has devised strict measures to ensure that our food stock is secured. I am informed by the Ministry of Trade that supplies of rice, sugar, flour, and other food items are available.
Guided by the ongoing process of scrutiny around the $500 million is committed by government, the President pledged for greater transparency and accountability in the management of the resources available for the pandemic, noting that a single government account has been opened to cater for rapid one-stop financial transaction.
Fellow Gambians, residents of the Gambia, there is growing concern that the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the Gambia has increased to 10.
He announced the establishment of a donation committee regarding COVID-19 and appointment of a national response coordinator in the management and provision of socio-economic support. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Aminata Jo.
The Gambia government providing food assistance to the vulnerable communities in the Gambia. Next, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday says that it was too soon to ease the UK's COVID-19 lockdown and warned of a risk of a second wave of the virus. Boris Johnson was speaking outside Downing Street on the Thursday back to work since recovering from the virus, saying UK was beginning to turn the tide. Although UK has flattened the peak of the virus, he said priority is to avoid the second outbreak.
This is the moment when we can press home our advantage. It is also the moment of maximum risk, because I know there will be many people looking now at our apparent success and beginning to wonder whether now is the time to go easy on those social distancing measures. Yet we must also recognize the risk of a second spike, the risk of losing control of that virus and letting the reproduction rate go back over 1. Because that would mean not only a new wave of death and disease, but also an economic disaster. And we would be forced once again to slam on the brakes across the whole country and the whole economy, and reimpose restrictions in such a way as to do more and lasting damage.
UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson speaking there. And from that, we come back home because government has pledged to provide 200,000 tons of fertilizers to farmers to make the 2020 season productive enough to prevent hunger resulting from the outbreak of the coronavirus global pandemic. The president, during the launching of the COVID-19 food aid, urged the youth force to consider shifting attention to farming for the production of cereals and vegetables across the country. The call for back to the land is occasionally remembered by every sitting president, especially at the time of natural disasters. On how would this plan roll out, we go with this report.
Ahead of 2020 rainy season, President Adama Barrow has called on Gambians to turn attention to the production of staple food with a view to address potential hunger due to the outbreak of the coronavirus global pandemic. Agriculture is a leading sector in the Gambia's economy, contributing 20 to 30% of the nation's GDP. The poor performance of the sector has resulted in deepened rural poverty and stalled GDP growth, which is barely able to keep up with the population growth, according to the National Development Plan.
I urge all able-bodied persons, particularly youth, to redirect their energies into agriculture, be it to cultivate our staple foods or horticulture production. Together, let us make agribusiness a reality.
The advocacy of homemade food has always been a song to the griots in the government. The APRC leadership is still better remembered for the slogan, "Grow what you eat and eat what you grow." On what will the current dispensation do better, the president made some pledges.
In a global pandemic, such as what we are witnessing, every country must look inward to protect and provide for its people. Therefore, it is equally timely that 2,000 tons of fertilizer are available to support farmers in the upcoming rainy season and further strengthen our drive for food security.
Meanwhile, Ministry of Trade has ensured that supplies of basic commodities such as rice, sugar, and flour are available to consolidate government's measures to ensure that the state of public emergency is ensured. The President invoked emergency power granted by the Constitution to issue strict regulations. Reporting for African News, I am Aissatou Tamba.
And from that report there by Aissatou Tamba, next we head to Zimbabwe because the Zimbabwe's government is providing shelter for homeless people in the capital as part of measures to cope the spread of COVID-19 in the country. This has brought life-changing opportunity for those who barely stay in homes, and some are hoping to venture in life-rewarding activities when the lockdown ends. Authorities say it has not been all rosy to deal with the situation, but hope it can bring change after the lockdown. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Farai Shumba, Frank Mwambungo, and Tatenda Bingwa live on the street, surviving by collecting empty bottles and washing cars. They were rounded up at the start of the national lockdown and brought to a shelter where they're experiencing a world of difference.
You're assured of a decent night's sleep. You are assured of a meal before you sleep. On the street, there's no guarantee of sleeping because of police patrols, and sometimes there's not enough money for food.
They joke how they wouldn't mind COVID-19 lasting till August, so they can stay here during the winter.
The coronavirus has changed my life. If I look at my skin right now, it is different because I'm bathing in clean water and I am eating well.
They've all volunteered to help out in the kitchen and yearn for a fresh start.
As for me, my life is changing and I don't wish to go back in the street.
But the transition to shelters has not been easy for everyone.
We have a big challenge of drug addicts, and they are having to scale the Jurawo at Mount Abden to look for drugs, and we have engaged the Ministry of Health and another NGO which is going to deal with the problem of drug addiction.
Those who are willing at this and similar camps for women and children across the country will receive vocational skills training. This park was one of the preferred spaces for street dwellers to put up for the night. Now that they've been cleared out, authorities want to make sure they never have to resort to it for accommodation again.
We would have failed as a ministry if the majority of these people after the lockdown find themselves back to the streets.
The three I spoke to have no intention of doing so. Tatenda wants to operate earth movers. Frank is hoping to get a driver's license, and Farah is going to try his hand at farming in the village, where the air is much better anyway, he says.
The Zimbabwean government providing shelter for homeless people in the country. Well, there's more news coming ahead, but for now, we'll take a break and come back shortly with the remaining of the story. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
COVID-19. Leave no one behind. Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that cause illness, ranging from the common cold to more severe lung diseases. COVID-19 is the most recently discovered disease caused by coronavirus. As we fight this pandemic, we must be kind by supporting others. COVID-19 is not specific to any sex, gender, race, nationality, or skin color. So, let us not stigmatize or discriminate against anyone or certain groups. Fear of exclusion and discrimination may result in those who may have contracted COVID-19, including migrants, to hide their symptoms rather than seek treatment. This puts everyone at risk of getting sick. In many contexts, people who migrate to work, study, or join their families are key players in nation building, including combating COVID-19. Let us all play our role in challenging misinformation and discrimination against migrants. Be considerate of others' needs and do what you can to help. Encourage others to wash their hands frequently. Avoid touching their face, eyes, mouth, and nose. Practice proper cough etiquette. Avoid public places. Practice social distancing and stay at home if they feel unwell. The Gambia is called the Smiling Coast because its people are kind. Let's show that kindness in fighting COVID-19, our common enemy. Let's fight it together. For more information, or if you experience any symptoms, dial 1025.
Welcome back. You're watching the World Today News Bulletin on Africa TV, and now to the rest of the stories. The Gambia's Accountant General has clarified that the government had actually spent $60 million as opposed to initial reports of $143 million out of $500 million being used in response to the COVID-19 in the Gambia. He was speaking during a joint press conference of the Ministry of Health and Finance on Friday, where the Minister for Finance announced the disbursement of $160 million. The money, he said, went on areas such as mobility for the Ministry of Health, payment of quarantine facilities, and postage of medical items.
However, I must clarify that in terms of actual expenditure, we spending the $60 million. The $100 million is relating to some procurement that is currently ongoing, is not yet concluded. So therefore, it is set aside and not yet paid out. Because that is pending the completion of the procurement process. Then the $100 million would be disbursed, but it is released to us as the paymaster, but we have not disbursed it out. So the other areas we have spent the $60 million include allowances for the health workers, travel expenses relating to the team that the Honorable Minister of Health mentioned about, that is the burial team that is going across the country. And then the other impress, that is monies that are paid to the various health teams across the country, not only in this in the Greater Banjul area, but across the country in the regions as well.
The rapid credit facility offered by the International Monetary Fund of about $1 billion has now landed in the accounts of the Central Bank of the Gambia, says Minister of Finance.
Is that last week I also mentioned the IMF providing a credit facility to the tune of $21 million. I am pleased to announce that the $21 million converted into dollars, approximately about $1 billion, has now landed in our accounts. It's in the Gambia, and I will be going to the National Assembly to seek for authority to spend it. I'll be going for supplementary appropriation because this was not part of the budget. Therefore, in line with the laws, I have to go to the National Assembly to request for the additional spending.
Mamoun Njai, Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, speaking there. Next to Egypt, because businesses in Egypt are getting back to normal after the government eases COVID-19 restrictions. The country's partial lockdown has greatly affected many of the businesses, and not much have changed since operations resumed, according to some business owners. But the government hopes that the move will help businesses to recover from the COVID-19 impact. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Over the past month, shops in Egypt have been forced to close at night during weekdays and shut completely on weekends. These are usually the busiest sales times. Many have suffered under the COVID-19 partial lockdown.
At first, we used to sell a lot of disinfectant wipes and liquid, but not anymore. It lasted for a week and then people got bored. They are now staying at home and they have their stocks, and the sales have now dropped. It's below the usual average. There are clients that I haven't seen in weeks. Those with kids are afraid to go out and they don't want to get infected.
The government has finally lifted some of its restrictions. All malls and shops can now operate all week long until 9 o'clock in the evening when the night curfew begins. The first weekend has passed, but Hamdi says nothing much has changed for him.
It would have been better if I stayed at home. The entire market around me, if you take a look around, fruits, vegetables, any goods, no one is selling. People have been staying at home without work for over a month now. Where will they get the money? I expected things would be better, but so far they are not.
The Egyptian government is hoping that its relaxation measures in markets would help the economy pick up. That was evident in shopping malls that serve Egyptians with higher income than those at common markets like this one. But it appears some are still struggling.
And from the report there in Cairo, Egypt, finally we head to Uganda, where Ugandan health workers are working to eliminate the impact of malaria in the country amidst the coronavirus global pandemic. The campaign is aimed at reducing pressure on the health sector as the country registers 25,000 cases on a daily basis. Authorities are also providing preventive health gears for traders in market as the country is in partial lockdown to stem the spread of COVID-19. For more details of that, we go with this report.
A campaign against malaria. Health workers spray insecticide at marketplaces. They want to reduce the malaria burden during the COVID-19 pandemic.
COVID is bad enough to constrain the health system. So we need other preventable diseases all to be kept at bay.
Figures from Uganda's health ministry show that the country registers 25,000 cases of malaria per day. Uganda is currently under a partial lockdown, and most of these traders spend a night here. But to keep them safe from malaria, local authorities are now promoting preventive methods. Health workers say waterlogged areas and overgrown bush are breeding grounds for mosquitoes that cause malaria. Apart from spraying the area, they are also giving them treated bed nets.
We have to make sure that while we keep distance in where we sleep under the bed nets. That when we have fever, we go to the health services to get checked so that malaria does not kill while we are taking care of COVID.
Ugandan scientists plan to breed genetically modified mosquitoes as part of a plan to fight malaria in Africa. But that's a long-term solution. And for now, the health ministry says anti-malaria drugs, use of mosquito nets and indoor spraying are the best available weapons to keep the killer disease at bay.
That report in Kampala, Uganda will finally bring this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on these stories and others, you can also log on our website on africa.tv. Well, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Bye for now and stay safe.
Have your say.
Fellow Gambians, my government has approved a $500 million